Start in a minute or two. Mrs. Fisher, Skugitzvot, Zion, Itzvot, El Rishon. Interesting name. Ramesh. Oh, so you're a missionary? It's not for you. It's not for you. I don't speak to missionaries. There's nothing for you to learn here. The inventions your church made has unfortunately dumbified you. Okay, we're gonna have to lock you. What's the minimum age to marry? Men are 13 years old, women are 12. Okay, let's go. B'Shem Hashem na'aseh v'natzliach, Shiur Torah, Bruchim Habayim. We're back here on our Torah Foundation series based on the Cholvot HaLevavot. We're still in the introduction, and of course, the introduction is a life changer. Tonight's shiur is going to be for the Refuah Shlema and Hatzlacha Rabba for Ephraim ben Shulamit, Rabbanit Sarah bat Anat, Rabbanit Levana bat Sarah, Sarah bat Levana, Avi Mori David ben Asriya, Imi Morati Doris bat Joa, and all of Am Yisrael and all the righteous Noahis that continue to support, continue to sponsor, continue to learn together with us, Baruch Hashem. Anyone that wants to donate could go to our website, be'ezrathashem.org or bhtorah.org. And of course, all of you that have not tried out the AI Rabbi, or it's been some time since you tried it out, we've just released a major upgrade on the app. It's better than ever, Baruch Hashem, and you could also use it online, meaning on your desktop with your same subscription. So you can go to airabbi.org or AI Rabbi on the app stores and try it out, Be'ezrat Hashem. So, Rabotai Karim, we recently went to New York, and over there we spoke about why do some people deny the truth? They fight against the truth. And tonight is going to be sort of a continuation of that talk based on the Chovot HaLevavot's words, really trying to address who is the greatest enemy of the heretics. People falling into heresy seem to have a conviction that can sometimes seem stronger than the ones that didn't fall into heresy. You talk to them, they have conviction. And those that are bothered by it try their best to answer the heretics' questions, but to no avail in most cases. Why does it seem like many heretics are unchangeable? In fact, why do some of them get even more heretical as they get older? These are the questions that the Chovot HaLevavot will address tonight, and what seems simple until you dig deeper inside it and recognize who's the heretic's greatest enemy. And of course, for those of you that are not heretics, don't be so comfortable in your own skin simply because there's heresy within every single person that's dying to come out. So the Chovot HaLevavot gave us a understanding of all of his inner battles, of why he initially thought not to write this book, but then reasoned and rationalized and inspected his own heart, realizing that his inclination not to write this book was coming from the evil inclination, was coming from the Satan. And now he wants to dig deeper into that introspection that he found, which of course we will all find in ourselves. What does it mean that the Satan is inside you? What does it mean that you have a Yetzirah? What does it mean when somebody says that they do not want to believe in God, or they want to believe in some other form of idolatry or heresy, such as the Christian idolatry of believing in a man God, or unfortunately the modern day Jewish idolatry that says God needs you? That's been a new form of heresy spearheaded by Manis Friedman and his friends, or all types of other heresy and idolatry. Why does it seem that the atheists are more convinced in their beliefs than sometimes religious Jews? You talk to some of them, they're convinced that there's nothing. And the Chovot HaLevavot says as follows: I realized further that man has a powerful drive to obtain what is the height of evil. Just like the Torah says, the evil inclination, Parashat Noach, the evil inclination already comes out inside the person at birth, whereas the good inclination only comes during his bar mitzvah. It's 13 years old for a boy, 12 years old for a girl, which is when they become officially adults. Unlike today, where someone that is 30 years old, we're hoping he became an adult. So the Chovot HaLevavot is telling us that the natural inclination of a human being is a drive to obtain evil. That is the natural inclination, meaning he's predisposed to go towards something that is evil. Now, evil doesn't necessarily always mean the most extreme cases, such as murder, rape, and all the other heinous crimes that are unfortunately becoming more too common in society, or all too common in society. But nonetheless, evil. He tends to be negligent in the pursuit of kindness, lacks in seeking the good. He's drawn to frivolity and amusement. This is not a new insight from the Chovot HaLevavot, just like everything else. He's getting all of this from the Torah itself. In the book of Isaiah, in chapter 22, verse 13, Isaiah speaks in the name of God about the wicked people. And he says, the wicked people say, Achol v'shato ki nachar namut. Eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. This is today called you only live once. So might as well do whatever you want. Eat and drink because tomorrow we die. Shlomo HaMelech says it in another way, where he says, give a strong drink to the miserable and wine to the embittered soul. This is in Proverbs 31, verse 6. Someone that is working really hard and does not see the blessing in what they do tend to be miserable. So they want to drink, they want to go to the bar, they want to forget about reality for a moment. So Shlomo HaMelech says the wicked people's mentality is the same thing. They say give a strong drink to the miserable and wine to the embittered soul. But the difference is that the wicked will drink even without being bitter, even without being miserable. Why would they drink if they're not bitter and miserable? Because they want to follow frivolity, foolishness, light-minded. They want to amuse themselves, forget about reality. This has become all too common in society, where anytime people find an excuse to go have a drink, they do. Whether it's getting a new client, signing a new deal, whatever reason, they want to go and amuse themselves by getting a drink, by feeling a little tipsy, by getting an idea that reality is not reality, at least for the moment. This is the natural inclination of a human being. The problem is that if this continues after the drink, they can live a life of heresy. They can live a life of frivolity. They can live a life that they'll regret. And the Chavot Levavot continues and says, if a vision of lust appears to him and beckons to him, he fabricates a false rationale to follow it. He then brings support for its claims in order to strengthen its case and patch up its inconsistent reasoning, all to justify his behavior. Once a person decides that they like to follow this foolishness, they like to follow their desire, their conscience is going to tell them, yeah, but this is wrong. She's married to somebody else. Yes, but this is wrong. He's married to somebody else. Yes, but this is wrong. This is somebody else's property. Yes, this is wrong because of whatever other reason. So what does he do? What does the heretic do? What does the wicked person do to silence that conscience? They start looking for support claims to strengthen their case. There was once a Jew that went off the derech, decided to abandon Judaism, decided to abandon the Torah, even though he grew up in the yeshiva of the Brisker Rav. And one day, the Brisker Rav is walking, and this heretic, who didn't just stop doing mitzvot, but started saying things that are against the Torah, walks by him, and he sees that the Rav does not say hello to him. As the prophet Isaiah says, "En shalom Hashem amar l'reshaim." No hello, no shalom, no peace. Hashem said to the wicked. And this, of course, bothered this heretic. So he came up to the Rav and he said, "Kvod Rav, I had a lot of questions. That's why I left." The Brisker Rav says to him, "You did not have questions. You had desire. In order to justify your desire that you wanted to follow, you invented questions." And this is exactly the case with all heretics, no exceptions. The moment they discover that their desire is against the Torah, that you're not allowed to intermarry, that you're not allowed to eat non-kosher, that you're not allowed to steal in business, that you're not allowed to desecrate Shabbat, they decide they don't believe. Even though they believed before this desire came up. So in order to silence their conscience, they decide to invent all types of excuses. What is it like? The Magid Miduvna said that there was once, it's a parable, he always answered questions with parables. He said there was once a king traveling with his people, and they passed by a big field. And on the field, they saw there were many trees with targets on them. And every target had an arrow going through it on the bullseye. One bullseye after another. Every single one of these targets. And some of the trees were so close to each other, the king was amazed. How could somebody hit all of these bullseyes? I must make him the general of my army. They go, they look for the house that's on the field, and they see there's a little hut. knocks on the door, and a middle-aged man, half drunk, comes out. Yes? Oh, Your Highness, what can I do for you? He says, I want to know, how did you hit all of the bullseyes and all of the targets in your field? And the drunk starts laughing. He goes, no, Your Highness, no. I'm not a sharpshooter. What I do is I shoot the arrow first. Wherever it hits. And then I go with my paintbrush and I draw the target around it. This is the life of the heretics, the life of the missionaries, the life of the idolaters, the life of the people that do not want to follow the word of Hashem. Each one has a different excuse. Each one has a different target that they painted around. They all have a desire. In Christianity, they tell you, we are the new covenant. But yet, the old covenant, 10 commandments, they don't follow. Why they don't follow? No one knows. Because even in their own book, Yoshke told them that he didn't come to absolve the Torah, go against the Torah. He came to fulfill it. So they don't even follow his words. And you're never going to find two Christians that are alike, because every one of them has a different belief. Just like they have over 200,000 different versions of the New Testament. No two are alike. Everyone is their own religion. Some believe he's a man god. Some believe he's something else. All types of confusion. Primary reason of why this is the case? Simple. Yoshke did not want to keep the mitzvot. He wanted leadership. He wanted to tell people what to do. And that's what he got. A bunch of people that also don't want to follow the Torah and the mitzvot. Don't want to fulfill what God said. They want to feel like they're their own boss. They can do whatever they want. And that's what it is. Whether it's Christianity, Catholicism, Protestantism, Lutheran, whatever it is. It's all the same thing. In so many words, absolving themselves of all of the crimes they make on a regular basis by simply pinning it on some guy that died 2,000 years ago that can't even defend himself. Meaning he gives you permission to be a criminal. Do whatever you want. Adultery, theft, murder, whatever it is. Listen, as long as you stay loyal to the guy that died and can't defend himself, you're allowed to be a criminal. You're allowed to fulfill your lust, whatever your lust may be. On the other hand, you have the atheists. The atheists claim that there is no God. But every so often, you have a discussion with them. You say, well, where did it all start? Because we all know that a line, every line, doesn't matter if it's a crooked line, a straight line, a long line, a short line, every line has a beginning point. Furthermore, we know that time elapses. Right now is a few moments later than a few moments ago. If time did not move forward, we would be living and reliving the same exact moment over and over again forever. So we know that if time elapsed, that is no different than a line that has a beginning point. Time began at some point. What was there before time? What was there at the beginning of the line? Whether you believe it's 100 million years ago, or 100 billion years ago, or 14 billion years ago, is all irrelevant. Every scientist, every generation will come up with a new number that they cannot prove in any way, shape, or form. They just theorize. Why argue and spend your entire career on something that you can't prove? Simple. Because if I believe in God, then I know that he's smarter than I am. And if I know well enough that anything that I invent, I have to give instructions, then he must have given instructions. Especially when there's witnesses, millions and millions of witnesses that say he gave them instructions in public. And if I see that these instructions are against my personal preference, because it doesn't allow me to be a thief, it doesn't allow me to be an adulterer, it doesn't allow me to be a he-she, it doesn't allow me to do all of these different things that the scientist prefers. So what does the scientist say? No, there is nothing. Now, you want to believe in nothing? You want to believe you came from a monkey? No problem. Who brought the monkey into life? Where did that first cell come from? Whenever that was, regardless of when it was, whether it was 5,000 years ago, 500 billion years ago. What happened before that point? Oh, we don't know. We don't know. You do know. You just choose not to want to know. Why? Because the moment you admit that there has to be a creator of the creation, then you have to agree that the creator gave instructions and therefore has no limitations and does not need to go through the foolish process of evolution in order to create the creation. But the atheist does not want to believe, because if he believes, he has to change his life. The same concept goes with the Muslims. The Muslims say that the Torah is true, but not the one as the Jewish people have. Apparently Muhammad, who's not even Jewish, he had the real version of the Torah, but the Jewish people that he learned from, they don't. Now, the fact that he murdered all of them is just an incidental. Let's not pay attention to that. Why? Because if the Torah that the Jewish people have is true, that means that Muhammad's Islam is false. So therefore they can't believe it. That's why you're rarely going to see debates between the Jewish sages and the leaders of Islam, because there's no postulates, there's no common ground between the two, since they don't even believe we have the real Torah. Now, the people that are simply haters, anti-Semites, ignoramuses, always say, tell us about the Talmud. Now, if I told you about the Talmud, you wouldn't understand it, because your level of ignorance is at such a high level that you would not understand one or two words that come out of my mouth. So I have to explain things in stories. But the top priority for us at all causes is the Jews. Why? I'm a Jew. I have to teach the Jewish people. If non-Jews want to learn as well, they're more than welcome to. But unfortunately, many times you meet Jewish people that know less about the Torah than even the Gentiles. And in fact, they have more claims against it than the Gentiles do. How could a non-religious Jew become so convinced that everything else must be true except what he's supposed to be? He'll believe in science, he'll believe in evolution, he'll believe in nothingness, he'll believe in rationalism, he'll believe in everything else except his own, why he came to this world, who he is really. Says the Chovot HaLevavot, this desire to do evil is the natural inclination of every single person, even more so to the Jew that has a bigger evil inclination, because of desires. Because the moment that they find some type of desire, some type of lust that they know, inherently they know this is forbidden, according to the Torah. So what do? They'll look for more false truths, false facts, invented facts, and convince themselves that they're not invented. Convince themselves that the false is true and the true is false, in order to strengthen their case. And if, however, the light of truth appears to him and beckons to him, he fabricates untruths to avoid following it. He argues against it, he distorts the case, he contradicts the claims in order to tear it apart. And it's inconsistent reasoning. And it's consistent reasoning in order to part ways with it. In so many words, once he has a desire that's forbidden, he'll invent questions. But since he knows that it's all lie, he knows that what he wants is forbidden. He knows what he wants is not good. He knows that God knows better than him. But he desires what's forbidden. So what does he do? He invents questions. And the more his desire is fulfilled, the more he cleaves to that desire, the more his conscience bothers him. So he has to convince other people with more lies, so they could follow the lie also, in order to comfort himself. Because now he's not alone. When he was 20, it was okay for him to be the lone heretic. When he was 30, he figured he needs a friend. When he became 40, he decided to start giving videos and lectures about why he's a heretic and why being a heretic is the right way. By the time he's 50, he has entire courses over it. At 70, he starts a major organization with endless amount of money, exerting all of his energy just to get more heretics to join him. But he always has a primary target to get some big religious figure to join him. Meaning, he wants to convert the righteous people. He wants to convert those that are the exact opposite of him. Why? Because that will give him more justification on his wickedness. Because inherently, he knows deep inside, he's living a lie. And you see that the more the conviction a person has in his wickedness and his heresy, the more they try to justify their heresy by getting other people. Now this is one of the proofs that it's all inherently evil. Why is it all evil? Because according to our Torah, we have a mitzvah from God that says, Kol Yisrael Aravim Zelazeh, that all of the Jewish people are guarantors for each other. We are responsible for each other. We have to help each other get closer to Hashem. We have a reward for it if we do it. We have a punishment for it if we don't do it. Meaning, God is telling us in our Torah that we believe in, that you can't just live a careless life. You can't be just a lone ranger in the middle of the island. You have to care about your fellow Jew and get him to get closer to Hashem. If you do it, you get rewarded. If you don't, you get punished. That's the belief of the Torah. So much so that there's another mitzvah that's also called Ve'afta le'recha kamocha, that you have to love your fellow Jew as much as you love yourself. Ve'afta mitagel, you have to love the convert, someone that came from a different religion and now became a Jew. You have to love him even more than a natural-born Jew. And on top of all of it, you have ochech tochiach et amitecha, that you must rebuke your fellow Jew if he's going against Hashem. And if someone is doing something against Hashem, you actually have an obligation of protesting against it. You can't stay silent. So we see that out of the 613 mitzvot, there's a whole list of mitzvot that show our obligation to each other is not a suggestion, but rather a divine obligation, where there's a reward for it and there's a punishment for it. The Gemara in Masechet Shabbat says that Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah realized that he made a mistake by not rebuking his fellow neighbor because he felt bad for her that she was a Jewish widow. And he did not rebuke her for her violation of Shabbat. After he realized he made a mistake, he fasted for the rest of his life until all of his teeth turned black. Because he realized that in heaven, he was judged for her sin because he did not rebuke her that one time. Meaning that the more a person knows about what the Torah says, the more they realize they have an obligation to their fellow Jew. On the other hand, an atheist believes in nothing, according to them. But yet, you will never find an atheist that's not a missionary. Every single atheist out there always makes sure that he shares or she shares her beliefs of atheism. That's not necessarily always the case with Jews that are religious. You could have a religious Jew that conducts business with you, or that has a event that you attend to also. You're in the same room, you're in the same company, you're in the same office, and that Jew could literally never mention a single word about his belief in God. Because he knows this is not you, you're not Jewish, he's not going to share it with you. Or even if you are, you're not religious, he's not going to share it with you. He should, but it's not necessarily always appropriate, it's not necessarily always the time, he doesn't necessarily feel the need to. But that's not the case with atheists. Atheists are the number one missionaries in the world. You will never find a single atheist that does not share their belief in atheism with every single person they encounter. Hi, how are you? I'm Joe, the atheist. Well, I didn't ask you what you believe. I just asked you, how are you doing? Oh, yeah, no problem. I'm just an atheist. Just wanted to let you know. Okay, fine, but I didn't ask you what you believe or don't believe. No, I just asked you, do you want anything to eat? I mean, do you want the waiter to bring you something? Yeah, sure, they can bring me some salad, but just make sure they know I'm an atheist. Who asked you? Who cares about what you believe? Who asked you? Why? Why is it that the atheists seem to be so convinced in their atheism that they feel the need to share it with anyone, everyone, at all times? And the more religious the counterparty is, the more they feel the need to address the difference. That they're an atheist, unlike you. Why? And you see in the comments right now, people are writing, some of them saying, yes, exactly, Rabbi, I have this friend who does it, and then there's other people that are atheists. What are they saying? Oh, prove to me that God exists. And look, even here, instead of paying attention or simply just going to the next video, they feel the need to stay here to share their disbelief. Why would you watch a rabbi if you don't believe in God? What are you going to learn? You don't want to learn anything. You don't want to believe in anything. So what's the point? You know what the point is? They're only here to missionize. They're here to share their beliefs. Why is it that way? Again, our Holy Torah gives us the answer. The prophet Isaiah, chapter 57, verse 20, says, Areshaim kiyam nigrash. The wicked will be like the driven sea that can't rest. The more wicked a person is, the less connection they will have to Hashem. And the less connection they have to Hashem, the more they'll be driven to the point where they cannot rest. They have to share their belief. They have to share their wickedness. And what these atheists do, what these heretics do, is look for mistakes in the creation or in the words you say. Meaning they spend their entire lives, when they don't have to work, when they don't have to do things just for basic survival, looking for mistakes in the creation, looking for mistakes in some speech, looking for some mistake. That's all. They look for red flags. Now, I remember when I was in the investment world, my expertise was looking for red flags. Something doesn't look right. You look at a balance sheet, you look at a corporate charter, you look at contracts, you look at different things, and you look for mistakes. Why are you looking for mistakes? Because those mistakes create investment opportunities. Either there's a mistake in a negative way, and therefore you think that the company is going to declare bankruptcy or fall or lose as a result of this mistake that's unnoticed at that point. Or vice versa, there's a mistake and there's a hidden value, there's a hidden gem within the investment that's not being recognized. So I'm all familiar with looking for red flags. The difference is, when we were looking for red flags, we were looking for red flags that exist. Meaning we were looking at something that exists and analyzing whether it's really a red flag or not, and whether this creates any inherent value or not. The wicked don't do that. They already have a conclusion. Their conclusion is, there is no God. Their conclusion is, there is no Torah. Their conclusion is, anything that's the opposite of what the Torah says. And all they're looking for is something that will support their case. And since everything that they've already learned on the internet and in different books has already been disproven and shown that it's false time and time again by Jewish sages, they look for new things. And even if they can't find them, they invent them. Simple. One atheist, that was a professor, was having a debate with my dear Rabbi Ephraim a few years ago. And the only reason why Rabbi Ephraim even engaged this discussion, it was a private discussion over a period of a week, was because this professor says that his main goal with every student in his class that's religious is to get them to not be religious anymore. To get them to abandon God. So Rabbi Ephraim figured that if he could change this guy, he could stop the damage that he's causing. Anyway, over the week, every question was answered, every doubt was addressed, and then the guy started grasping at straws. And he said, well, if you're saying that God created the world and everything is perfect, we found an imperfection. There's a blue whale, and the blue whale has a tiny little fin that has no purpose. So you see, there's a mistake in the creation. After a quick search, Rabbi Ephraim said, what are you talking about? You being a professor and this being your field, you should know this better than I do. And I was able to find the information faster, that the scientific world itself actually discovered that this little small fin has a lot of uses and benefits to the whale. Oh yeah, you're right. Wait, so you knew this? You were just hoping I didn't know. You were just looking not for truth, but to win. To win. The same thing they said about the appendix. Oh, the appendix of a human being has no use, but in reality we've discovered that it has many uses and benefits to the body. So why do the atheists continue to bring up these false truths? Simple. They're looking not for truth. They're looking to win. They're looking to win the debate. They're looking for something that's going to strengthen their false belief because their conscience is killing them. Because they realize as they get older, they're getting closer to discovering who Hashem really is, face to face. As they get older, if the rabbi's words were right, and it is a heaven for the righteous and a Gehenom for the wicked, they know they're going to Gehenom. They know that they're going to suffer tremendously without an end in sight. So what do? They figured, let me take some people down with me. Let me bring some more and show as if I have an argument to stand on. And that's also why, when it comes to debates, the Jewish sages have generally steered away from debating other Jews, because the Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah specifically says that if a Jew is a heretic, you're not even allowed to stand within 4 feet of him. There is a permission to debate the Gentiles if there's an absolute necessity to do so, such as a life risk or something like that, but not another Jew. Why not another Jew? Because the typical Gentile that has different beliefs before that debate will still accept truth from the Jew that can prove his truth. Whereas the Jew that's a heretic, since his heresy stems from lust and not from rationale, from desire and not from a real truth, he will only mock your truth because he doesn't care about the truth. There were exceptions in history where one Jew debated another. For example, the debate in Barcelona between the Ramban, Nachmanides, and the church. His opponent was a Jew who was representing the church, and the only reason why the Ramban was able and allowed to do so was simply because life was on the line. Otherwise, he would never talk to this Rasha. Because the Gemara in Masechet Pesachim clarifies to us that if he's a Jewish heretic, he's not a heretic because he has found a different truth. He's a heretic because he found a desire, he found a lust that the Torah says is forbidden. And he cannot live with the fact that this is forbidden. So he rather spend his entire life looking for excuses to justify his behavior instead of changing himself. He will spend the rest of his life inventing sources that justify his lies instead of simply facing the truth that he was wrong. Because it's easier for him to find false facts than it is for him to change himself. Now, when you go into the conversation with any of these heretics, especially those that are atheists, you show them, listen, there is countless proofs, scientific proofs, mathematical proofs, archaeological proofs that the Torah is divine, that it's the single truth. There is nothing else. And many times when they have nothing to say or they ran out of words, what do they tell you? Well, if there was scientific proofs of the Torah, how come you haven't converted all of the atheist scientists? Or, if the scientific proof comes from a Jewish scientist, then he must be biased. Now this, of course, sounds like it has legs to it until you dissect it. They say that if the Torah had scientific proof, that all of the scientists would convert. All of the scientists would become religious Jews. And if the scientist presenting is Jewish, then certainly you can't acknowledge him because he's biased. How could this argument, these two arguments, fall on their face? Number one, when it comes to converting all of the atheist scientists, Jews and Gentiles alike, into religious Jews, the truth has nothing to do with it. What has to do with it is whether they're looking for the truth or not. Because if they have a personal bias, a lust, a desire that gets in the way, it doesn't matter how many facts the Torah can prove scientifically, mathematically, archaeologically, and otherwise. It doesn't matter because they're not looking for the truth. And when it comes down to saying, well, the Jewish scientist must be biased, so we can't listen to him, the response to that is pretty simple. How come we cannot respond? How come we cannot acknowledge the Jewish scientist that's proving that the Torah is divine, but we can recognize the atheist as if they don't have a bias? The atheist scientist, he doesn't have a bias? Only the Jewish scientist has a bias? The vast majority that you're holding by, they're all atheists. None of them, they're all without a bias. But all the Jewish ones have a bias. You start realizing that their argument falls on their face once you start pushing back the facts at them and simply showing them what they're saying. At the end of it all, the Satan convinces them that their lust is too dear to give up. And what stands in their way is God. And therefore they have to either reject his existence or say, yeah, I believe in something, I just don't know what it is. Like a half a believer, like giving themselves some type of credit that, listen, I believed, I just didn't know what it is. Well, when it came to your job, you invested time to learn what it is. When it came to marriage, you invested time before you chose somebody. When it came to parenting, you invested time before you raised your kid the way you wanted to raise him. When it came to your hobbies, you invested time as you fell deeper and deeper into the hobby world. Everything else you invested time in. But God that created the world and gives you breath and gives you air and gives you everything, that, not so much. That argument of, I believe in something, I just don't know what it is, it's not going to hold up. Why? You're in this world for a certain amount of time. How did you spend so much time on everything else except the purpose? How did you invest so much time on everything else except the purpose? The truth is, Rabotai, says the Chovot HaLevavot, every man has an enemy within him. And unless he has help from God, an ever-present corrective guide for his soul, and a self-mastery to bind it with the bridle of service, control it with the reins of virtue, and strike it with the right of discipline, musar, so that when performance of some good act occurs to him, he will not delay, and if his heart entices him to do otherwise, he will berate it and overcome it. In so many words, the Chovot HaLevavot is telling us it doesn't matter whether you are a heretic in the open or still to yourself. The Satan is within you, whether you're a religious Jew or non-religious. You are a righteous Noahide or a wicked one. The Satan is inside you. He is your greatest enemy. The Torah is never your enemy. The Torah is your instructions. God is never your enemy. He's the one that gives you life. Your enemy is within you, constantly trying to convince you to distance yourself away from Hashem more and more so he could completely destroy you. In fact, the Gemara says that Hashem showed kindness and mercy to the creation because the ultimate evil that he instilled into the Satan makes the Satan want to kill every person worse than the way you slaughter a cow. Meaning that according to the Satan, if he had his way, his evil is so great that he would literally make every single person blow up, no matter what the cause of death was. Whether the guy fell down the stairs, or the guy got sick, or the guy got old, or whatever the case is, he literally wants every person to explode and be the most massive, heinous death out there. And the only reason why it doesn't happen on a regular basis is because of Hashem's mercy not allowing the Satan to do so. What we saw ISIS do is nothing in comparison to what the Satan wants to do. Now, for those of you that have heard some of my past lectures talking about some of the supernatural things that Rabbi Yaron Reuven unveiled to the world in his book called Ruchot Mesaprot, in one of his conversations with the other side through a dibuk. Dibuk is when one soul that has left the world of a wicked person enters a living human being that made a mistake, made a sin of some kind, and therefore gets punished in this way. And Rabbi Yaron Reuven, who is the Talmid of the Ben Ish Chai, he would speak to them in order to convince them to leave or force them to leave. But in his book called Ruchot Mesaprot, he had a conversation not just with the soul itself, the dibuk, but also with the destructive angels that were in charge of tormenting that soul. And he started asking them questions. The dialogue is beyond anything I could cover here, but in so many words, they tell him what they do. They tell him their life. They tell him that there is only one female, everyone gets married to her. There's nothing that they enjoy in life other than causing suffering to the souls. Meaning, their desire is tormenting the soul, the wicked soul. That's what their desire is. Just like you desire food, money, lust, whatever it is, their desire is a single desire, to torment the soul. That's what they were created for. When you read this, and some of the other details that are in this book about what happens to these souls, if that doesn't make you shake, nothing will. Nothing will. And all of that is nothing in comparison to what the Satan wants to do to you. But just like the Gemara says, the Yetzer Hara has multiple names because he tries to fool the person in different ways. First, he comes to him as the Yetzer Hara to try to entice him to do something that's against the Torah. Tries to entice him to not believe in God. Tries to entice him to believe that he's the one that makes the money and it's not God that gave him the money. Tries to entice him to justify doing things that are against the Torah. After he entices him to do that, the Yetzer Hara now becomes the Satan, umastin alav, who goes and tells Hashem, look, this guy's a criminal. I just saw him steal. I just saw him commit adultery. I just saw him waste seed. I just saw him do this. As if Hashem doesn't know. But he's the tattletale. Goes and tells Hashem, prosecutes against him. That's why he's called Satan. Why is he doing this? Because he wants to get the final job, which is to be Malach HaMavet. Malach HaMavet means angel of death. He wants to kill the person. Because the moment he kills him, he's his. He can do everything he wants in a place that has no limitations like this world. And this very Satan knows that he cannot fool a person that goes to shul every day, that puts on tefillin every day, a woman that's modest, a person that keeps Shabbat, and fool them into becoming a heretic overnight. So what do? He strategizes. He strategizes with different things because he knows all too well what you like and what you don't like. What is it like? Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Miberdichov once came into the shul during the high holidays as they asked him to be the chazan, to lead the prayer. As the Rav comes in, early in the morning, everyone is waiting for the great Rav to start leading the prayer. They see him put on his talit, make the blessing, but then they hear him talking to himself. As he's talking to himself, people are wondering, what's happening here? After a few moments, takes off his talit and sits down. So the congregants came up to the Rav. They said, Kvod Rav, why aren't you leading the prayer? He said, you're never going to believe it. I came here to lead the prayer because you asked me to lead the prayer. But guess who else came? They're looking around. They can't see anyone. Oh, you can't see. The Satan came also. So as I was putting my talit, I see the Satan. He says, what are you doing? I said, I'm here to lead the prayer. I'm here to be a chazan. He says, I'm here to be a chazan also. Well, I have a right to be a chazan because they asked me to be the chazan. He says, they asked me to be the chazan also. Well, I learned Torah the whole year, so they want me to be the chazan. He says, well, I learned Torah all year also. I'm inside your heart, so I'm learning with you. So I need to be the chazan. He says, yeah, but I did mitzvot the whole year. So therefore I should be the chazan. And the Satan says to me, well, I did mitzvot also the whole year. So I should be the chazan. And after I argued with him back and forth, I told him, okay, well, if they asked you to be a chazan, and you're the one that learned Torah the whole year, and you're the one that did mitzvot the whole year, and you're the holy one, and you're the one that everyone appreciates, okay, then you be the chazan then, I'll just sit down. Here the Rav was teaching his community great lesson of Musar. No matter how religious you are or think you are, the Satan is inside you, waiting for you to give it an opportunity to destroy you. Sometimes a person is already mostly destroyed because they have fallen for the trap of the Satan and they've abandoned God. They have fallen for idolatry. They have fallen for heresy. They have fallen for something that's against God on a regular basis, to the point where they cause other people to sin even. And of course, those people, one after another, have the same common excuse, which is they cannot live without their lust. And therefore, justifying their lust requires them to distance themselves from God. And all they're looking for is supporters of them living that lifestyle. On the other hand, a person that wants to be close to Hashem, that prays each day, that gives tzedakah, that learns Torah, should not feel overwhelmingly comfortable. Why? The Satan is also inside you. In fact, the Satan will work harder on you than he will on the heretic, because the heretic already brought himself to such a point where his heresy, his wickedness is on autopilot. The Satan doesn't even have to help him anymore do evil. He has accustomed himself to evil. But the person that is doing the will of Hashem, that is following the mitzvot, has to be even more concerned, because the Satan is looking for every single opportunity to take over. And this means it's not once a week or even once a day. It's every single second. This is the reason why the Chovot HaLevavot says that unless he has help from God, an ever-present corrective guide for his soul, and a self-mastery to bind it with the bridle of service, he has no chance. And that's exactly what the Gemara says, that if not for the help of Hashem, none of us would have a chance. Because the Satan is not looking to turn you into an idol worshiper in 2 seconds. He's just looking for you to say Lashon Hara once. And therefore, once you say it once, and nothing bad happens, you'll say it again. And as the Gemara in Masechet Yomah says, after a person makes the same sin twice and doesn't see himself get punished, he thinks it's allowed. The Satan is not going to make you become a heretic against scholars, against rabbis, against the truth. No. He's just going to simply say, listen, why do you have to read this book by this rabbi? Why do you have to watch this lecture? Watch sports instead. Go cook, a extra meal for tomorrow or for the next day. Cook for the whole week ahead of time instead of watching the lecture. Why do this? Why do that? So he tries to create a distance between you and the truth. He tries to give you reasons of why you're too busy to listen to the truth. He tries to give you reasons of why this is not for you. Why? Because you're already religious. You don't need to learn this over and over again. You're already okay. And the Satan will do everything possible to chip at the soul of any person, to create a bigger and bigger distance between them and the truth, in order to eventually completely destroy them. He'll even empower a person that's inherently a heretic to pass tests, to do all types of things that are not possible for most people, just because he knows that once that person gets a leadership position, he can destroy a bunch of people at once. So you see, Rabotai, when a person does not understand that fighting the Satan is a full-time job, because there's opportunities with every decision. Somebody just offended you. You want to punch them. Satan says, go for it. But Torah says, don't take revenge. It's like, all right, I'm not going to punch them. I'll just say something bad against them. Satan says, go for it. But the Torah says, not allowed to take revenge. And that decision to stay silent and not go and argue and fight against people and insult them, that was simply the Satan either failing or succeeding. If you said it, Satan has a point on the board for him. If you didn't, you have a point. Moments later, somebody cuts you off on the highway. You could scream out a curse. Hey, you and your mother and your father and da-da-da-da-da-da. Because that's what you feel inside, because the Satan is burning inside you, wanting you to say all these things. You want to curse every generation that's responsible for him. But Torah says no. If you do it, Satan has a point. That point is much more than just a point. That point is one step closer to him breaking you and making you think it's allowed to talk like that on a regular basis. Making you think it's allowed during that circumstance because you were justified somehow because somebody cut you off. There's an event, you see somebody you know, but she doesn't look at you. You're offended. How could she not look at me? Just 2 weeks ago, we had lunch together. I invited her to my house. I don't understand. You're offended. Now all of a sudden, you want to respond. You want to say something. You want to send a message. You want to acknowledge the fact that they did not acknowledge you. You do. Satan gets a check mark. Why? Because now you're one step closer to saying Lashon Hara. You're one step closer to inventing all types of gossip. You're one step closer to thinking it's allowed because somebody did not acknowledge you. Rosh Kollel, Rav Shlomo Sharvit Yichye, spent Shabbat in Tveria, and he was with Rav Kook. Rav Kook from Tveria said an extraordinary insight during Sudah Shlishit, where he said, the person that gets offended by somebody else will also get punished. Now, of course, the person that offended them will get punished because it's obviously forbidden. But even the one that's offended will be punished for being offended. Why? He says, because the only reason why he's offended, the only reason she's offended is because of her ego. Who are you that somebody would talk to you that way? You think you're too much. You think you're more than what you are. But he says the righteous people, they tried to emulate Moshe Rabbeinu, ve'anachnu ma, we're nothing. So the more you there is, the more me there is, the more you will be offended by everything and anything that does not fit your description of good. And therefore that ego that was not removed has to be removed at some point or another. Has to be cleaned off. Either in this world or the next. Sometimes the punishment is simply an embarrassment in this world. Sometimes the punishment is a little bit more than just embarrassment in the next world, depending on when a person chooses to fix themselves. So you see from here, this is obviously a very elevated level where the average person does not even think that way. The average person doesn't think that, wait, I was offended and I'll be punished for being offended? We're lucky if we could just stop offending people. If people just stop offending people on a regular basis, that would already be an achievement for our generation. But the point here is that those that cleave to Hashem knows what the omek adin is, the depth of judgment is. And what they're teaching us is that the Satan will look in every way possible to create a distance between you and Hashem. Sometimes the Satan will come in a way that you expect him. Sometimes the Satan will come in a way that's completely unexpected. And if you're not conscious of the fact that the Satan is just like a Kozak trying to chop your head off, then guess what? He already did. And that's what the Kotzker Rebbe said to one of his students. You have to imagine that the Satan is standing over you like the Cossacks, looking to chop off your head. And if you can't bring yourself to imagine that, then guess what? You already did. You already did. You already lost the battle. If you think that you're safe from the Satan, that's because you already lost the battle. You don't realize he took over. So this Rabotai Karim is the introspection that the Chovot HaLevavot did for himself, and thereby we are learning and benefiting from it. Each and every single one of us has work cut out for us. Each and every one of us has our own difficulties we have to overcome. Sometimes it's a laziness when it comes to learning. Sometimes it's a laziness when it comes to waking up in the morning and going to shul. Sometimes it's a stinginess when it comes to giving tzedakah. Sometimes it's being hot-tempered and losing your temper right away. The minute somebody says something that you don't like, sometimes it's looking at something that you know you shouldn't. Sometimes it's touching something that you know you shouldn't. Sometimes it's talking to someone that you know you shouldn't. All of those things, in of themselves, seem minor. But each one of them is just one stepping stone that Satan is looking for to create a bigger distance between you and Hashem. The more of these add up, the more the shock will be when you wake up one day and realize you don't even recognize yourself. Your connection to Hashem that you had a year ago, 2 years ago, is like a different person than where you are right now. You can't find yourself. You don't know how come, what happened to me. And anytime somebody asks me, what can I do to elevate myself back to where I was in the past, 4 months ago, a year ago, 4 years ago, whenever it was? The simplest answer is, what did you do back then when you were really connected to Hashem that you don't do now? What did you do? Did you learn more Torah? Did you watch more of my lectures? Did you pray with more kavanah? What did you do different? Usually, it's very easy to answer that. Well, guess what? That's missing. That's your first thing to fix. That's your first thing to fix. If you used to watch my lectures every single day back then, and now you only watch them once in a while, fix that. Go back to every day again. If you used to pray 20 minutes, a half hour, an hour each time, and now you only pray 5 minutes, guess what? Fix that. If you used to give tzedakah, you give maaser back then, and now you stopped, guess what? Go back to that. Yeah, but Rabbi, I have less money now. Nobody asked you about the quantity of money. It's all about the effort. The effort you put in, the percentage is much more significant than the number. If you give maaser, it's much more important of giving maaser, even if you only made $100, than giving 0.1%, and it ends up being $1 million. Why? Because Hashem is looking for effort. Quality over quantity. Look at what you were doing back then, compare it to now, find the missing link, and start fixing that. After that, you already see yourself going in a better direction. But if a person does not think that any of this is relevant to them, that's only because the Rebbe Mikotsk was right. The Satan already chopped off their spiritual head. They're gone. Because they don't realize the Satan was even standing there. Be'ezrat Hashem, this time of the year, the time of Elul, is a time where every Jew, no matter righteous or wicked, young or old, male or female, has to introspect and see what they can do to fix the missing link. See what they can do to get closer to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If they were closer to Hashem in the past, they already have the map of how to get back there. if they're at their height right now, then they already know that the most important thing is to maintain it and to keep getting higher. In fact, even the Gentiles, the Noahites, have to evaluate themselves. Because on Rosh Hashanah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu judges all of mankind, not just the Jewish people. And therefore it's an opportunity for both Jews and Gentiles to inspect their hearts, see what's missing, stop believing the lies of the Satan, and start, at the very least, investigating the truth, if not already following it. Because if you're following the truth of the Torah, then you already know the direction of what you need to do. If you're not following it, if you're still confused, then remove the bias of your desires, remove the bias of your lusts, and you're already going to see how the picture becomes much clearer, much better, and much easier for you to follow. Thank you very much for learning with me. Hashem bless each and every single one of you to succeed in your servitude of Hashem and finding and living the truth of the Torah and running away from the Satan with success. Anyone that has any desire to partner with us, wants to donate, you can donate on our website, bezaltashem.org or bhtorah.org. And if you don't know what that is, you can send a private message and we'll give you the website. But either way, Rabotai Karim, this is the time to do it. This is the time to do it. Call to B'chol V'Yeshuot. Bezat Hashem, we'll learn again later this week.